Hi, Sagittarius. Welcome to your March 2019 Astro Alchemy with Rain and Moon. So what is happening in March for Sag, including moi? Well, the sun is in Pisces as the month begins. And for Sagittarius, Pisces is the fourth house of home and family. And because Neptune has been spending quite a few years in this sector, we have had this planet hanging out in that fourth house. So it's always there. There's always some planet occupying that fourth house. And I have, even when I watch other astrologers and they're always talking about, is Sagittarius going to move? When are we going to move? Some of you may have already done so last year. And with Neptune in the fourth house, that can, in some cases, be very difficult for some people to kind of even visualize where they want to move. Some Sagittarians may have a lot of confusion with the issue of home for some reason. Either you don't know exactly where you want to live, or there is some confusion with plans. Maybe there is like a solid plan in the works, but it still is not, there is still stuff connected to it that you really don't understand. And so if you're selling a home, this may be a time when this particular issue comes up, because there is a new moon this month, but it's during a Mercury retrograde. So I'm curious how this is going to play out with some of my fellow Sagittarians. But the sun is in this sector, so it just may be on your radar. It may be something, the issue of home may be for some reason on your radar, something that you're concentrating on. Maybe you are doing something with your home right now, making plans for it, or just kind of assessing. Like if you are planning on selling a home, for instance, you may be trying to see what you need to spruce up in order to put it on the market and things of that nature. On the first of the month, Venus goes into Aquarius, and this is in the third house of communication. Venus can bring money with her, and so any kind of online endeavors can be financially lucrative for you. And the other thing about Venus is that it can harmonize a situation. The third house can be your siblings. So if you've had any kind of prickly situations with brothers or sisters, I believe cousins falls into this house, and aunts and uncles. This can be a time of making nice with them, maybe even benefiting financially from them in some way. This is also your local area. And I would even say, if you're scouting for new houses, you may have a pleasurable time doing so, going to neighboring communities and seeing, maybe on foot, and seeing things from a ground, from the perspective of being on the ground, so that you really have a deep connection to where you might want to move. On the 5th, Mercury goes retrograde. So we do have Mercury retrograde several times a year. This particular Mercury retrograde will be at 29 degrees of Pisces in that fourth house of home and family. So for those people that have already gotten to the part of selling a house, that you have actually maybe put it on the market, or maybe even have a buyer, something may get a little bit screwed up. Mercury can be contracts. And in the fourth house, we're talking about a real estate contract. And there may be a misunderstanding If you put an ad in the paper, there might be some kind of a typo that doesn't give the right price. Who knows? And you might have to retract something. So just understand that if you have put your house on the market recently, you may find that after the month of March, there is smoother sailing. Mercury retrograde in the 4th house can indicate some kind of misunderstanding with your mother that may have other consequences. In other words, you've made nice with brothers and sisters, and then if you have some kind of confusion or a misunderstanding with your mother, that could impact that harmony if she goes and tells them that you did something wrong. So just be aware ahead of time. On the 6th, Uranus goes into Taurus. Now this time it's going to be for good. Well, for the next 7 years at least. Because it did go into Taurus briefly way back last May, and now it's back there in the sign that it will occupy for almost a decade. And this is Uranus in Taurus is affecting your 6th house of work and health. And this can be a good placement for somebody for a Sagittarian who is aspiring to go into a career that either involves energy healing or displaying psychic talents like clairvoyance and things like that. Or anything Uranian is indicated here, including astrology. Another thing that can occur when Uranus is in the 6th house is that you may have kind of an oddball schedule, where if you work in a retail environment, maybe you have a split shift, or you sometimes work at night and sometimes work 9 to 5, and it's not if you're used to working very set hours, it might change. I remember when I used to work retail, I loved working totally different hours all the time because I liked variety. And I had a coworker who was a Scorpio, which is a fixed sign, and she just wanted to work a very set schedule, like a 9 to 5 schedule. And that was exactly what I didn't want to do. So the point of me saying that is to say that's not necessarily a bad thing to have Uranus in the 6th house. It can kind of loosen up a rather monotonous schedule, because the 6th house is not just the work that you do, but also your daily routine. So with Uranus there, it could make it quite unusual in some way. And so if you are working like a specific shift, you might work a very unusual one that most people do not, like second shift or third shift. And so you might be going to work when everybody else is sleeping. And that might not, it depends on the individual. But remember that this too shall pass. These transits are just temporary. Although, 7 years is a long time. Obviously, this is a general reading, and, Uranus's transit through your particular 6th house will differ from person to person, with the unequal house system, which most astrologers seem to use these days. The other thing, too, about Uranus and the 6th is that if you're somebody who has worked a 9 to 5 job, you may find freedom from that. And maybe you are working, maybe you're a digital nomad and you're just using your computer. Technology is connected to Uranus to work instead of being in the physical office. And that can really appeal to Sagittarians because we love freedom. There was something else I was going to say, too. And why can't I think of it now? And it's something to do with what the 6th house represents. Oh, well, if I think of it, I'll mention it. On the same day, we have a new moon in Pisces, that 4th house again. And so you may be hearing of opportunities for new housing. And whether or not you decide to move right away is a different story. Maybe it's not going to be available right away, but it might make you feel really good to know that you have this opportunity to change your life. This is Sag's year with Jupiter in Sagittarius. So it might be a lucky break. Who knows? We might get a lucky break if we want to move, and this perfect opportunity for us. One thing I want to state too is that I think like sometimes you have to connect the dots when you have 2 transits on the same day. So if Uranus is going into Taurus in the 6th house, and we have a new moon in Pisces in the 4th house, and we, kind of combine that, we could say that for some Sagittarians, this idea of working from home, with your computer is a new lease on life. And as I said, Sagittarians love that sense of freedom. And you may just be emancipated from the 9-to-5 hamster wheel grind. And that might be very appealing to many of you. On the 20th, the sun goes into Aries. Now, why this is important for Sag is that it's a fellow fire sign. So you're talking about a trine, really nice vibes. Manifestation powers are on point. In the 5th house of romance, in the house of creativity. So great for artists, great for lovers. And on the very same day, speaking of lovers, we have a full moon at 0 degrees of Libra, the sign that is ruled by Venus, the goddess of love. And this full moon is occurring in the 11th house of hopes and wishes. So full moons can bring things to culmination. Any kind of wishes that you have wanted fulfilled in terms of something you want very, very badly. Maybe it will finally come true for you. And yes, maybe even during a Mercury retrograde, there's the possibility of even a person that you may have somehow been separated from, or the two of you stopped communication, gets back in touch with you. On the 26th, Venus is in Pisces, and this is the 4th house of home and family. Again, another trigger to that 4th house. And Venus, again with the money angle, for those people who are selling, you may get an offer with some cold hard cash attached to it. So that might be very good. And the other thing too is that whether you're selling your home or not, you may be trying to decorate it. And this could be the time when you start a home decoration project. Now, I'm not talking about necessarily remodeling, which to me would be more like Mars in this house, but just the cosmetic side of things. Making it more attractive, perhaps with the thought of selling it, or simply because you want to enjoy it more. You may get money from your mom for some reason, because 4th house can be the mother. On the 28th, Mercury turns direct at 16 degrees of Pisces. So in that 4th house, you may finally come to some kind of like decision about a home matter. And this can be, a resolution about that. And on the 31st, and by the way, too, going back to that scenario of selling a house, you may also get everything, all the paperwork sorted out. On the 31st, Mars goes into Gemini in the 7th house of committed partnership. But we need to talk about Mars in the 6th house because it's going to be there all month. And this is the house of health. Mars in the 6th house can be really getting your butt in gear, especially when it comes to physical fitness, where you are being active, maybe more active than you've been in a long time. And Mars in the 6th house, if you have a workplace, you may have some kind of a beef with a coworker, and there's a little bit of clashing with somebody, conflict. When Mars goes into 7th house, we could say a conflict with with a love partner, but that's not necessarily always going to be the case. It doesn't have to be that you're just arguing more with your partner. It could be that you're doing things together more. And when I say doing things together, I mean more active together, including sexually. Mars is the libido. And, if you have been kind of dormant in that area, you may find that you're just going at it like bunnies. And Mars in the 7th can also be a legal case that, kind of comes up, a fight in court about something. And it could be something along those lines. And I think I'll leave it there. It seems like a pretty eventful month, if I do say so myself. And in any case, I hope that you enjoyed this, Sag. If you would like to look at your next 12 months and see what the trends are for you specifically. Not this general reading, but kind of you specifically, as well as looking at your natal placements, some of them, and seeing how they kind of like explain some of the patterns in your life, some of the attitudes, and you in general. Please click on the link below. Otherwise, have a great March. Take care. Bye.